What is up, friends and RC family? My name is Alec from High Noon Hobby. If you're new to the channel, thanks for checking it out, and if you aren't new here, thanks for checking back in. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a comparison on a 6-gate course between the TRX4 Bronco by Traxxas and the TF2 Marlin Crawler by RC4WD Drive. Both of these kits, super stellar kits, both have their own pros and cons and kind of their own driving styles and different reasons for liking them. So I figured that we'd put them head to head just so that you could get an idea of what each rig is actually going to look like when it's doing a course. Now, this might not be a super fair comparison because the Marlin is, well, more or less stock besides just taking out some leaf springs and the electronics. There are definitely better electronics in here than normal. The Revolver V2 snub nose from Holmes Hobby is in the Marlin Crawler, so it's got a little bit of oomph, it's got a little bit of pep compared to the stock RC4WD Drive brushed motor that comes in it. But the Bronco, on the other hand, has a lot of money in mods put into it. Brass, aftermarket tires, aftermarket wheels, and obviously electronics as well in that guy with the Rock 412 from Spectrum. So, you know, I don't know. It's going to be a tough comparison here, just in terms of that premise alone. But I figured I want to show kind of the advantages of each. Now, if you've been paying attention, this first gate here, this is kind of just to test the vertical capabilities, being able to articulate around and make contact with the face of the rock while also on a pretty steep vertical. There's a interesting kind of crevice in that face that you'll see better from the perspective that I did on the TRX4 run, but I wanted to show the Marlin first because, well, you'll see when I show the TRX4 run. But the Marlin got over that pretty difficult steep vertical climb with ease. It didn't take a whole lot of time to get over those first two gates, and now we're running into what I would say is probably one of the #1 issues that I have with the TF2, and that is the steering capabilities. And it's, I don't think necessarily the fault of my servo, because I am running an aftermarket servo. I think in that one I'm running a Savox servo. I can't remember exactly which one, but it's a decent servo. And the real issue is just in the steering components interacting with the leaf suspension. So I've got to work on tightening up the leaf suspension, and I think that by doing that, and maybe by putting an anti-roll bar, I think that's what it's called, on the front axle, I can eliminate a lot of this weird sloppiness that I'm having with the steering that ended up causing me to take a few backups there just so that I didn't end up in a really nasty side hill position and falling off the side of this course. So second gate here, absolutely no problem for the Marlin Crawler. Clearances were fantastic in there. The approach angle is fantastic, which is surprising when you look at this truck. The bumper looks huge with that winch on there, but it does a really good job of keeping the approach angle acceptable. It's certainly not anything stupendous, but it is acceptable. Now, here, this is the second issue that I have with the Marlin Crawler. I'm glad that both of these issues, the two major issues that I have with the Marlin Crawler, have come to light. Now, out of the box, we've got issues with the clearance on the skid on the bottom there that's holding that differential or the transfer case in. That is way too low and way too bulky. So I know that A&M Garage makes a high clearance skid for the Marlin Crawler, and I will definitely be working on getting that put onto this, as well as those shackles to fix the first issue, which is the steering issue. So both of those issues are kind of the only two issues that I've found when sending this Marlin up some pretty difficult lines, and hopefully some pretty easy solutions to those problems with some parts from A&M Garage. So last gate here. Now I'm eating my own words with the approach angle. This is a pretty steep approach, and we've got a gap in between the run up to the actual face of the rock, which makes it even more difficult. These tires are a bit smaller. I believe these are 419s. They might even be smaller than that. I don't know. These are the stock tires for the Marlin, so tiny tire-esque, although they are larger than the normal TF2 tires because it is the Marlin Crawler with the bobbed bed and the bigger tires and the bead locks and all that good stuff. But here you're seeing the incredible low center of gravity of the TF2. It's really able to tackle some super steep climbs right out of the box. This doesn't have any weight added to it whatsoever. This is just exactly how the weight sits out of the box. Obviously, the suspension has been modified a little bit, but I haven't spent any money on the suspension. And the electronics, I might have pulled a little bit of weight out by adding the Revolver V2 snub nose in there, but it's not a whole lot. So overall, the Marlin absolutely crushed that course. It did it with ease, I would say, especially these first two gates right here. And now I can kind of show you why I didn't want to put the Bronco first, because these first two gates, getting up this first little climb, was a struggle, and it took me a little while. And to be upfront with you, this isn't even my first try with the Bronco. I sat there for probably 5 or 6 minutes working on different ways to get up this face in the Bronco, and it was tough. I even had to ditch some of the scale accessories that I had in the roof rack, but again, that's why maybe this comparison could be a little bit more fair, that while the Bronco has a lot more money into the build, the Bronco's build is not specifically for this type of terrain. It's more of a trailing truck, it's more of a have fun on easier obstacles truck, but actually trying to get it up comp lines and more technical crawls can definitely be a challenge. That being said, it did make it up through these first two gates, so, you know, with enough trial and error and with enough driver mod, anything is possible. No, I do think that probably a more capable driver could get this up this rock face easier than I did. As you can see, I struggled, but I did manage to save it most of the time. I don't think that I flipped the truck trying to get up here, but I did essentially spend an entire comp course's worth of time on just this climb alone. So is this going to beat out the Marlin? I think it's pretty obvious to see right here at the very beginning of the TRX4's run that it is not. And I think the big two things with the Marlin being able to beat the Bronco out on this first hill here, the big two things are being lighter overall, so it has a lot easier time pulling its own weight up, the Marlin that is, and then also just weight placement. On the Bronco, while I do have a lot of weight up front in the truck, I also have a lot of weight up top in the truck with that roof rack. I've got the like sunshade up there, and I even have a tent up there still, and then a little bit lower I've got the high lift jack, and on the other side I have a whole bunch of other scale accessories. So there's a lot of weight on the Bronco up high, which is not helping it out. There's also some sprung weight in the front, which could be helping, could be hindering the performance through here. So this section right here, this is where things started to get a little dicey with the Bronco in terms of steering, and not in the same way that the Marlin had issues. So the Bronco, the TRX4 does steer really well even under high pressure. It doesn't really seem to have a problem like the Marlin does. The Marlin, when it's under load or when it's under a lot of strain one way or another, that can bind up the shackles for the leaf springs, and that can start causing all sorts of problems with the steering geometry. The TRX4s don't have that issue. The link system on the TRX4s is fantastic, and the steering system works really, really well. The problem here is just the size of the vehicle. And I will say, okay, I guess I could complain about the TRX4's steering in that when you are locked up in the front and the rear, the steering radius is just absolutely atrocious. But I think that would be pretty much fair to say about any locked up truck, so I don't know that it's necessarily a fair gripe specifically about the TRX4 here. The TF2 did have to take a backup or two backups around this corner to not end up in a nasty side hill as well. So while we are taking a lot more time here to get the Bronco lined up, we did get it lined up. It didn't fall off. It was able to do it. It just took a little bit more time, just like the first little climb there did as well. These next two gates, I want to say, are really where the Bronco shines. Mild obstacles, but stuff that still requires high clearance and still requires good suspension geometry and generally good suspension setup. The TRX4s do shine in these scenarios. So these next two gates are fairly easy for the Bronco to knock out. Now, for this video, I've left the whole thing at 50% speed, and that's more or less just to give me more time to talk about what's going on here. But let me know in the comments if you think that the 50% speed over the whole video is a little bit too much, and I should try to knock it down and just not talk as much. I'm happy to do that too. But here we are. Like I said, that gate, piece of cake for the Bronco here, for the TRX4, and this next gate here, I believe this next gate also fairly easy for the Bronco. The only problem with this one is going to be, if anything, approach angle. But if the Marlin Crawler makes it, this one is not too far off the approach angle, although it does have a bit more bumper sticking out of the front than the Marlin does. And like I mentioned, that Marlin bumper, I don't know what it is. It's the angle on the bottom of the bumper that comes on the Marlin Crawler is really good, and it helps it slide along stuff and not get caught up like some bumpers do. So even if you don't have the approach angle that you need, it kind of compensates for that by being a little bit more slidey than something like one of these square plate bumpers that just gets stuck on everything. I think I got stuck on my skid plate there. I'm not entirely certain if that was axle or skid plate, but I definitely got jammed up on something there for a second. So I want to say that the Marlin went through this totally smoothly in terms of clearances, although I'm not 100% certain on that. Yeah, nope, this is the one. This is the one that screwed the Marlin up pretty significantly with the tolerances on that skid plate. So here through this section, while I did get caught up a little bit on the Bronco, you could see just how insignificant of a problem it was. I didn't hit any gates. I didn't get off my line the way that I did in the Marlin at all, and that's because the clearances on the Bronco on the TRX4 are a lot better than the Marlin in terms of that skid plate on the bottom. So getting through that gate with ease, some nice flex. And here you can see the scale accessories that I was talking about on the other side there, the scale pickaxe and a little rope, and I used a necklace and just wrapped it up, zip tied it, made it look like a chain. You should probably buy a chain. They're super cheap, and I'm pretty sure I already broke this necklace, but yeah, you know, it's zip tied on there now, so just ride it till I die. So let me know what you think. Would you rather, on terrain like this, would you rather be taking a fully loaded TRX4 like this, or would you rather be taking a TF2 Marlin Crawler that's just bare bones? Me personally, if I was to be doing more lines like this, I would say Marlin Crawler all day long. With a few more modifications, I think it could be even more capable, and it's really fun to watch a leaf spring truck just absolutely crush it on lines like this. But the Bronco did make it through the course. It just took quite a bit longer to do it, and it was a bit more frustrating to do it as well. But, you know, it did make it through. So I enjoy both trucks. I would say for rocks and stuff like this, the Marlin Crawler is taking the cake for me. But to each their own, right? And there are many more modifications that could be made to the TRX4, which would make it more capable for rocks like this. So, you know, that's just what I ended up doing. So that's all I've got for you guys in this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. This was a pretty long one, so I hope it wasn't too long for you. But I enjoyed making it. I enjoyed putting these two trucks head to head and seeing what each capabilities were and what the downsides and drawbacks on something course like this was going to be for each of these trucks. So let me know what you thought in the comments down below. If you guys have ideas for other videos, to go ahead and leave them down there in the comments as well. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to High Noon Hobby for more videos every Friday and Sunday. I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.